"Mr. Morgan, we have an emergency," the security chief said. "Someone has stolen your identity and is walking around the building." When David looked at the camera, he saw his own face, but it wasn't him. Same DNA, different life. In that moment, he realized that half of his 46-year life had been stolen. David Morgan stood frozen in his corner office on the 62nd floor of Morgan Technologies, staring at the security monitor with disbelief. The face looking back at him from the screen was his own, yet it belonged to a stranger. Same angular jawline, same deep-set brown eyes, same scar above the left eyebrow from a childhood accident he remembered vividly. But this man wore a janitor's uniform and carried a mop bucket, while David wore a $3,000 suit and carried the weight of a $40 billion empire. The security chief, Martinez, shifted uncomfortably behind him. "Sir, we've been tracking this individual for the past hour. He has access to all floors, which suggests he's either an employee or someone who's managed to compromise our security system. But Mr. Morgan, I have to tell you, I've never seen anything like this. It's like watching you in a funhouse mirror." David's hands trembled as he reached for the desk phone. For 46 years, he had lived with the certainty that he was unique, that his success was his alone, that his DNA belonged only to him. The revelation that someone else shared his exact features felt like discovering that his entire life had been a lie. The story began 46 years earlier in St. Mary's Hospital in downtown Chicago. David Morgan was born at 3:47 a.m. on a cold February morning, 7 minutes before his identical twin brother. But while David was placed in the arms of Elizabeth and Robert Morgan, a wealthy couple who had been trying to conceive for years, his brother was whisked away to a different destiny entirely. Elizabeth Morgan had suffered 3 miscarriages before David's birth, and the stress had taken a severe toll on her mental health. When the doctor informed the Morgans that Elizabeth had actually given birth to twins, Robert made a decision that would shape 2 lives in dramatically different ways. He knew Elizabeth couldn't handle the stress of raising 2 children, and their family could only afford to provide the best life for one child. Through a private arrangement with the hospital's social worker, Robert Morgan ensured that one twin would grow up as David Morgan, heir to the Morgan family fortune, while the other would be placed in the foster care system under a different name. It was a decision made in desperation and fear, but it was also a decision that would haunt Robert Morgan for the rest of his life. David grew up in a mansion in Lincoln Park, attended the best private schools, and never wanted for anything. He was brilliant, driven, and surrounded by opportunities that money could buy. His parents told him he was their miracle child, the answer to their prayers, and David never had reason to question his place in the world. Meanwhile, his identical twin brother grew up as Michael Torres in a series of foster homes throughout Chicago. Michael was equally brilliant, equally driven, but his talents were forged in adversity rather than privilege. He learned to fight for everything he got, to value hard work over inherited wealth, and to find strength in struggle rather than comfort in luxury. As David built Morgan Technologies into one of the world's most successful artificial intelligence companies, Michael was working his way through community college, holding down 3 jobs to pay for his education. While David was being featured on magazine covers as one of America's youngest billionaires, Michael was earning his GED at night after spending his days cleaning office buildings. The 2 men had lived parallel lives in the same city for 46 years, never knowing that their other half existed just miles away. They had the same intelligence, the same determination, the same dreams of success, but their paths could not have been more different. Now, staring at the security monitor, David felt the weight of those parallel lives crashing down on him. The man on the screen moved with the same confident stride that David had always considered his signature. When the janitor turned to speak to someone off camera, David saw his own profile, his own gestures, his own unconscious mannerisms. "Sir," Martinez said quietly, "what do you want us to do? Should we apprehend him?" David's throat felt dry as sandpaper. "No. Not yet. I need to see him myself." "Where is he now?" "Basement level, near the storage rooms." "But Mr. Morgan, if this is some kind of corporate espionage attempt, someone trying to impersonate you to gain access to classified information." It's not corporate espionage, David interrupted, though he couldn't explain how he knew this with such certainty. Send me the location. I'm going down there myself. Sir, I really think security should handle this. If this person is dangerous. David looked at Martinez with an expression that brooked no argument. I said I'm handling this myself. Clear the basement level of all other personnel. I want to meet this man alone. As David rode the elevator down to the basement, his mind raced with possibilities that all seemed impossible. A long-lost twin brother? A clone? Some kind of elaborate hoax? But the more he thought about it, the more one possibility began to seem not just plausible but inevitable. David had always felt incomplete, as if something essential was missing from his life. He had achieved everything a person could dream of achieving, but success had never brought him the satisfaction he expected. He had built relationships, but they all felt superficial. He had accumulated wealth beyond measure, but it had never filled the void inside him that he couldn't explain. Now, for the first time, that void was beginning to make sense. The elevator doors opened onto the basement level, and David stepped into a world he had never seen before. Despite owning the building, he had never had reason to visit the maintenance areas. The fluorescent lighting was harsh and unflattering, the concrete walls were painted institutional green, and the air smelled of cleaning chemicals and machinery. David followed the sound of movement toward the storage area, his expensive leather shoes clicking against the concrete floor. As he rounded the corner, he saw the man from the security camera with his back turned, organizing cleaning supplies on a metal shelf. For a moment, David couldn't speak. Seeing the man in person was even more shocking than watching him on a monitor. It was like looking at himself in different clothes, in a different life. The man's shoulders had the same width, his hair fell in the same pattern, even his posture was identical to David's own. "Excuse me," David said, his voice barely above a whisper. The man turned around, and both brothers froze. For nearly a full minute, they stared at each other in complete silence, each seeing his own face reflected back at him. The resemblance was so perfect that it defied explanation. They were not just similar, they were identical in every possible way. Michael Torres had been working as a janitor at Morgan Technologies for 6 months, never knowing that the building's owner shared his face. He had taken the job because it paid better than his other cleaning positions and because working at night allowed him to attend classes during the day. He was just 3 months away from earning his bachelor's degree in computer science, a goal he had been working toward for over a decade. Michael had always felt different from everyone around him, as if he belonged somewhere else but could never figure out where. He was brilliant with computers and had a natural instinct for business, but his circumstances had never allowed him to pursue those talents fully. He had spent his entire life feeling like he was living someone else's life, waiting for his real life to begin. Now, staring at David Morgan, Michael finally understood why he had never felt complete. He was looking at the life he should have lived, the man he could have been if circumstances had been different. "This is impossible," David whispered, taking a step closer. "I know," Michael replied, his voice identical to David's in tone and timbre. "But here we are." They circled each other slowly, like mirror images coming to life. Every movement was synchronized, every gesture was familiar. When David raised his hand to touch his own face, Michael did the same thing at exactly the same moment. "How long have you worked here?" David asked. 6 months, Michael replied. "I've seen your picture in the lobby every day. I always thought there was something familiar about it, but I never imagined." He trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. "What's your name?" "Michael Torres." "But I think," Michael paused, his voice breaking slightly, "I think it should be Michael Morgan." David felt tears welling up in his eyes, an emotion he hadn't experienced in years. "How is this possible? How did we end up living such different lives?" "I don't know," Michael said. "But I think we need to find out." David nodded, pulling out his phone. "I'm calling my lawyer. We're going to get answers." Over the next 3 hours, in David's private conference room, the truth slowly emerged. David's lawyer had access to sealed adoption records, and with enough pressure and the right legal channels, the story began to unfold. Robert Morgan had died 5 years earlier, taking his secret with him. But Elizabeth Morgan was still alive, living in a memory care facility, her mind clouded by dementia. When David and Michael visited her the next day, she had moments of clarity where she recognized David but seemed confused by Michael's presence. "David," she said, reaching for his hand, "you look so much like your father today." "Mom," David said gently, "I need to ask you about something important. Was I adopted?" Elizabeth's eyes became distant for a moment, then focused with unusual sharpness. "Oh, my sweet boy. I've been waiting for this day for so long. I've been waiting for you to find your brother." The confirmation hit both men like a physical blow. Elizabeth, in her moments of lucidity, told them about the decision to separate them, about Robert's fear that she couldn't handle raising twins, about the years of guilt and regret that had consumed their family. "Your father never forgave himself," she said, tears streaming down her face. "He tried to find Michael so many times over the years, but the adoption was sealed, the records were lost. He hired investigators, spent fortunes trying to locate him, but Michael seemed to have vanished into the system." "I was right here," Michael said quietly. "I was in Chicago the whole time. I've been working in buildings you probably owned, walking streets you probably traveled, living in the same city as my brother for my entire life." David felt a crushing weight of guilt and anger. While he had been living in luxury, attending private schools, and building his empire, his brother had been struggling just to survive. They should have been together, should have shared their lives, their successes, their challenges. "Michael," David said, "I need you to know that if I had known about you, if I had had any idea you existed, I would have found you. I would have shared everything with you." "I know," Michael replied. "And I need you to know that I don't resent you for the life you lived. You didn't choose to be separated from me any more than I chose to be separated from you. We were both victims of a decision made in fear." But David wasn't ready to forgive so easily. "You've been cleaning my building for 6 months. You've been working 3 jobs to put yourself through school while I've been living in a mansion, driving cars that cost more than most people make in a year. That's not just unfair, it's obscene." "David," Michael said firmly, "what happened to us as children wasn't our fault. But what we do now, how we handle this discovery, that's our choice. We can spend our time being angry about the past, or we can focus on building a future together." David looked at his brother, seeing not just his own face but his own determination, his own strength, his own refusal to be defeated by circumstances. "What do you want to do?" "I want to be your brother," Michael said simply. "I want to learn about the family I never knew, and I want you to learn about the life I lived. I want us to figure out who we are when we're together instead of apart. And I want to make up for 46 years of advantages I had that you didn't," David replied. "I want to share everything with you. The company, the money, the opportunities. Everything should have been ours together from the beginning." Michael shook his head. "I don't want charity, David. I don't want you to give me things because you feel guilty. I want to earn my place beside you." "Then let's build something together," David said. "Something that honors both of our experiences, both of our strengths. You have knowledge about struggle, about working your way up from nothing. I have knowledge about business, about building companies. Together, we could create something neither of us could build alone." That conversation was the beginning of a transformation that would change not just their lives, but the lives of thousands of other people. David and Michael spent the next several months getting to know each other, sharing their stories, and learning about the parallel paths their lives had taken. Michael moved into the guest house on David's estate, not as a charity case but as a partner in planning their future. They discovered that despite their different upbringings, they shared the same values, the same dreams, and the same vision for what success should look like. Michael's experience in the foster care system and his years of struggle had given him insights into social problems that David had never encountered. He understood poverty, inequality, and the barriers that prevented talented people from reaching their potential. David's business acumen and resources provided the means to address those problems on a large scale. Together, they founded the Morgan Foundation for Foster Children, an organization dedicated to providing educational opportunities, mentorship, and support for kids aging out of the foster care system. But more than that, they restructured Morgan Technologies to become a company that prioritized social responsibility alongside profit. They implemented programs to hire and train people from disadvantaged backgrounds, created scholarship funds for students who couldn't afford college, and established mentorship programs that paired successful professionals with young people who needed guidance and support. The transformation wasn't just professional, it was personal. David had spent his entire adult life feeling like something was missing, and now he understood what that something was. Michael had spent his entire life feeling like he didn't belong anywhere, and now he finally felt at home. They were different in some ways. Michael was more cautious, more thoughtful about the human cost of business decisions. David was more aggressive, more willing to take risks for potential rewards. But their differences complemented each other, making them stronger together than either had been alone. 6 months after their first meeting in the basement, David and Michael stood together in the main lobby of Morgan Technologies, unveiling a new company mission statement that reflected their shared values and their commitment to using their success to help others. "When I built this company," David told the assembled employees, "I thought success was measured by profit margins and market share. I thought the goal was to accumulate as much wealth and power as possible. But meeting my brother Michael has taught me that real success is measured by the positive impact we have on other people's lives." Michael stepped forward, still amazed to be standing in a lobby where his picture now hung beside David's as co-CEO of the company. "I spent most of my life believing that I wasn't good enough, that I didn't deserve the same opportunities as other people. But working with David has taught me that everyone deserves a chance to reach their potential, regardless of where they start in life." Together, David continued, "We're going to build a company that proves business can be both profitable and purposeful. We're going to create opportunities for people who haven't had the advantages we should have shared from the beginning." The applause that followed wasn't just polite corporate courtesy. It was genuine enthusiasm from employees who were excited to be part of something larger than themselves, something that would make a real difference in the world. That evening, David and Michael sat on the terrace of David's estate, looking out at the Chicago skyline. For the first time in his life, David felt complete. The void that had always existed inside him was finally filled, not by success or wealth, but by the presence of the brother he had never known he was missing. "Do you ever wonder what our lives would have been like if we had grown up together?" Michael asked. "Every day," David replied. "But I think we might have taken each other for granted if we had always been together. Maybe we needed to experience separation to truly appreciate what it means to be family." "Maybe you're right," Michael said. "I spent my whole life feeling like I was incomplete, like half of me was missing. Now I understand why." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the lights of the city twinkle below them. David thought about all the years they had lost, all the experiences they should have shared. But he also thought about the future they were building together, the impact they could have, the lives they could change. "Michael," David said, "I need you to know that meeting you was the most important thing that ever happened to me. More important than any business success, any financial achievement. You gave me back the part of myself I didn't even know was missing." "You gave me a family," Michael replied. "For the first time in my life, I feel like I belong somewhere." As the months passed, the Morgan brothers became a symbol of second chances and the power of family bonds. Their story was covered by major news outlets, not just because of the remarkable coincidence of their reunion, but because of the way they had used their discovery to create positive change in the world. The Morgan Foundation had already helped over 500 foster children access higher education, and Morgan Technologies had become a model for how corporations could balance profit with social responsibility. They had proven that business success and moral purpose were not mutually exclusive. But perhaps most importantly, David and Michael had found in each other the family they had both been searching for their entire lives. They had learned that identity wasn't just about individual achievement, but about connection, belonging, and the relationships that give life meaning. 1 year after their first meeting in the basement, David and Michael returned to that same spot where their lives had changed forever. They stood together where David had first seen his brother, where the security footage had revealed the truth that would transform both of their destinies. "Do you remember what you were thinking when you first saw me on that security camera?" Michael asked. "I thought someone had stolen my identity," David replied with a laugh. "I had no idea that I was about to discover my true identity for the first time." "And what is your true identity?" David smiled, putting his arm around his brother's shoulder. "I'm David Morgan, co-CEO of Morgan Technologies, founder of the Morgan Foundation, and most importantly, Michael Torres Morgan's twin brother." "That's exactly who you are," Michael agreed. "And I'm Michael Torres Morgan, co-CEO of Morgan Technologies, survivor of the foster care system, and David Morgan's twin brother." They walked toward the elevator together, side by side, their reflections visible in the polished steel doors. For 46 years, they had been living as half of themselves, never understanding what was missing. Now they were complete, not just as individuals but as a family. The elevator arrived, and as the doors opened, David turned to his brother one last time. "Ready to go change the world?" "With you?" Michael replied. "I've been ready my whole life." As they rode the elevator up to their shared office, David reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. He had spent decades building an empire, accumulating wealth, and achieving success by every traditional measure. But none of that had brought him the satisfaction he felt right now, riding in an elevator with the brother he had never known he was missing. The doors opened onto the executive floor, where their names were displayed together on the wall: David Morgan and Michael Torres Morgan, co-CEOs. It was a symbol of not just their professional partnership but their personal bond, proof that family was about more than just shared DNA or shared upbringing. It was about choice, about commitment, and about the decision to build a future together despite the circumstances that had kept them apart. In the months and years that followed, the Morgan brothers would face challenges and successes, disagreements and reconciliations, just like any family. But they would face them together, as brothers who had found each other against impossible odds and who had chosen to use their reunion to make the world a better place. Their story became a reminder that it's never too late to find your family, never too late to discover who you really are, and never too late to use your gifts to help others. Sometimes the most important discoveries happen right under our noses, in the basement of our own building, in the face of a stranger who turns out to be the missing piece of our soul. David Morgan had thought someone had stolen his identity, but what he discovered was that his true identity had been waiting for him all along, in the form of a twin brother who shared not just his face but his heart, his dreams, and his determination to make a difference in the world. And sometimes, the greatest success isn't measured by what you build for yourself, but by what you build with the people you love, even if it takes 46 years to find them.